Okay, welcome. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It's Tuesday, November 12th. We're going to start with our instructional committee meeting, followed by a special operations committee meeting. We're going to start tonight with school improvement plans. And we are going in order tonight on our agenda, and we'll start with Moses White Beach. Do I have the wrong? I have the wrong, I don't have the right one. Okay, so adult ed is first, then who?
I don't think I got that.
Then science, me too.
I got the.
Then
operation.
CTE. Then wellness.
Special ed is going to the arts and
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so, am I
Okay, so
on?
we are starting with adult ed. Let's go, Ben.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me here. I know Ms. Rachu said she didn't bring presents for everybody, but I did. This is our marketing strategy. I'll get into it later on. It says Wallingford Adult Ed, and it was a hit at the Celebrate Wallingford because nobody was giving this out. They only got bags. So when people came for this, they had to sign up with us and give us their phone number and everything so we could contact them for possible enrollment. That was one of our marketing. I leave the bag here later on for people to take one home to cut some fruit or whatever at work.
Ooh, it's a cutting board.
Okay, so. So no cheese, just fruits. This is the video that's been
Could I
aired.
interrupt you for just a minute? For the purpose of our TV people, could you identify yourself, please?
Pardon me, I didn't hear you.
Introduce yourself.
Oh, thank you. I'm Sashi Goen, Director of Adult Ed. That be enough? Okay. I wanted to share this video with you. It's only 30 seconds because that's all that the local theater would allow us to show for the price we pay. So this is. Yeah. No, this has, our students participate in that, so we got more enrollment this year based on, the parents, students watching themselves on TV in the theater this summer, and then they brought their friends. So enrollment has increased. Again, it's anecdotal evidence, based on what they say. I don't have any hard and fast evidence other than, end of the year, I'll have another survey out to the students to find out. Thank you. Okay.
I was struggling in high school. I didn't like large classrooms, and this was an amazing fit for me and a great opportunity. I am inspired to do more because I have full access to everything I need for success. I just started teaching this fall, and I love it. The classes are small, and the students work hard and are great together. I'm looking forward to teaching here next year.
Okay, so as you can see, it captured all the programs we have. Adult Ed. You got the long version of my school improvement plan. This is the abridged version right here. How did we develop this plan? We, all our teachers are extremely familiar with the, college and career readiness standards. So, and they also know what the national competencies are for adults to achieve, successfully in the CASAS, which is the Comprehensive Adult Student Assessment System. So the teachers align the instruction to these standards, and the ESL teachers align it not only to these standards, but also to the English language proficiency standards. So they have two that they have to make a crosswalk and be able to align the instruction. So meeting with them, we had the data from CARS, which is the Connecticut Adult Reporting System. So we have two different systems that we are, we get data from. The Connecticut Adult Reporting System, which is called CARS. I'm going to start using CARS from now on. It's just a tongue twister. So the CARS gives us all the demographic details, the profiles, the number of hours attended, instruction hours, and returning students. It gives us all the data. So we sat down with, different departments, which is ESL, the ABE, the credit diploma, and then we looked at what were the biggest needs that we needed to work on for this coming year. And that's how our plan was developed. Okay, and that was the rationale. And how did we do that? We looked at everybody's instructional hours, and then we prioritized which two areas needed the most improvement. You have a question for me, Ms. Rahul? No, okay. So after prioritizing that, we found out that ESL students are the ones that, given the number of, even though we offered the instruction hours, they were just not, attending enough hours to make significant gains. They made gains, but not all of them were making significant gains as we would like them to. And one of the things we did find out at the end of the year was that they would like classes at different locations. So this year, as a part of the plan, we are offering class at Scout. We're offering one citizenship class and a basic communication class at Scout. And right now, I just got a survey back from all my students from all the programs that they would like a Saturday class that would deal with basic communication and some technology. And they would like to bring their spouses too, because it's Saturday. But I'll have to work out babysitting, so that's on hold. So, looking at the data that we did, thank you. We wanted our students, the new ones and the returning students, to get better at improving the language skills. And also not just the language skills, but to be able to be engaged in the community. And when I say engaged in the community, I'm talking about ways they would know, how would they access the library? How would they go to the Y? What kinds of things would they do? What do they need to do to go to a parent-teacher conference? So those are the things that we also wanted them to be able to become familiar with, not just the language skills alone. So that was our goal. Then we also found out that our CDP, which stands for Credit Diploma students who had less than 10 credits when they came to enroll in our program, it's the maturity or the number of credits that they have. It just took them longer to figure out that this is their last stop and they needed to, get a little more serious. So sometimes they are, middle school kids in adult bodies, so it just takes a while for them to mature. But those who have 11 credits and above, they have been able to at least earn, 4 credits for the whole year. Because, we have a very strict attendance policy that's mandated by the state for the number of seat hours. So that was one of the things that we needed to find out. Why not everybody was able to get the 4 credit hours. So what we did this year is we made it more flexible. The timings have changed, so we've been able to get more people. If we load all the classes just on 2 days, it is a little overwhelming for them. So we, spread it out. And this year we have a class just Friday morning, 10 to 12. In previous years, we never had a Friday class for credit diploma students. So that has been received well by our students. And then the last one, this is our total enrollment that we had for the 18-19 year. And I just wanted you to look at the number of enrollments we've had. And this year, by next year, when you look at this data, you'll find that there's been a significant increase because of all the various marketing strategies we have used. And our best marketing strategy is our students. Word of mouth, they go and recruit other students and they bring them to us. And thankfully for the VIOA, which is the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, we have been able to get a lot of federal grants, which has helped us in getting our students either a better job or an actual job that would align with the career pathways. And we have a counselor who works just with the workforce readiness. It's a grant also through federal government, and that we use to provide classes for them, not just to teach soft skills, but to teach everything that they would need to be able to secure a job, to get a job and secure a job. So that's one of the things also we're working on. So this is, I know, I can't brag, but it really took me an hour and a half to make this particular one, trying to figure out how to get those dots at the right places. So, but it worked. That's what I had Veterans.
It looks
And that's what
good.
I had Veterans Day for. To play around with Excel. But it worked. The bigger the dot, the more the students are from those countries. So as you can see, we have 36 countries right in Wallingford alone, right here. And the neat thing is that out of 69 students have their own children attending a pre-K through 12 grades. Yeah, and because we are, if you look at the whole pie, if it's K through 12, even though we might be just a small slice of the pie, it's a very important slice without which, the pie chart won't be a whole pie chart. So that's all I wanted to add to that, because we find, parents who are already students, but they also have children in the schools, and sometimes regardless of all our measures, some students fall through the cracks. A good example would be a couple of students in family literacy program that we found out the parents are not fluent in English or, not even literate in their own native language. So it was very hard for them to get the Chromebook permission slips done. So there was a whole month they were waiting without getting that done. So it was no fault of anybody. It was just that they didn't know how to navigate that. So it was, with the family literacy program, because it's one-on-one, and they were able to, and these are people not who are Spanish speakers. They are either Mandarin or Bengali or Pakistani, Urdu. So we had, even though we had the language barrier, when you sit down step by step, even though Ms. Vayu did a lot at SCOW, these are people who don't go to SCOW. So that was another way that we were able to help our student population. So that's my school improvement plan in a nutshell, and I'm open for any questions that you might have.
Questions? Questions? No further questions?
I would just like to make one comment. Thank you very much, first of all, and I do want to compliment Ms. Govan because over the last few years, in particular, we've worked very closely together the whole time, but really just trying to think creatively with her staff. And I think at the beginning she said that she went to the staff and the staff really embodied this plan. And I think that also really taking a look at your constituents, your customers, which you've done, which is all the students and families that we serve in that program. And it's really allowed us to do some unique programming. And I know we have some other ideas that are coming about that we're hopeful for, working with local businesses, and Ms. Govan has really done a remarkable job in doing that. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Manzo. I couldn't do it without the support of the Board of Ed and the town, because you've been very generous with as far as adult ed goes and very supportive. So thank you again.
Thank you. Okay, next up.
I'd like to just say I do have to leave early. I have 2 students I need to schedule for spring, and they will leave before I get there, so I really need to get there. They will not wait
Don't
even
let 'em go.
5 minutes, so I'll wait here till 7. I just need to meet them at
It's
7:50.
okay, don't let them go, Ms. Govan.
Thank you. And I do have those free gifts for you, because that's a good marketing strategy. You can talk to all the people who come for Thanksgiving.
Okay, science and technology.
I'm Kate O'Donnell, the Science and Technology Curriculum Coordinator. So our department has been embarking on the transition to the next gen science standards for a couple of years. Last year, our focus really was on the new curriculum documents and really getting teachers to dive into the new topics, dive into new instructional strategies. And so this year, our focus is to utilize the scoring criteria and improve their alignment to the performance indicators. So that's what we've been doing during our professional development days, is calibrating scoring, looking at the lessons and the units, and making sure that everything aligns. It's a big shift conceptually for teachers from learning about science to figuring out science. It's a multi-year transition to really shift to more of a student-centered learning environment in science. But every year I see so much growth as I do walkthroughs and work with teachers. So I'm really excited about how far we've come and how far we'll be able to go. We had a big shift this year in our computer science. We added the program over at DAG, so now we have the computer science in both middle schools. The two teachers have worked very closely together to ensure that the children have a common experience, whatever side of town they're on, in computer science. But our big move this year has been with Operation STEM Town and the opening of the Center for Innovation and Design, which many of you attended our opening. And this spring, we'll be having all of the 5th grade students come to the Center for Innovation Design and participate in 1 computer science and 2 science-based programs that align with the 5th grade Space Systems unit. So you'll be hearing more about that as we go through. Data for NGSS is a little bit tricky because this year we did the first assessment and we just got our baseline scores, which just went home to students, so now they can be publicly shared. But in meetings with the State Department of Ed Science Department, they really cautioned districts with doing anything with these baseline scores. They've been very clear that they don't want anyone to make program changes, to make curricular changes, to really make any changes based on this initial data. They're still modifying and getting the test where they want it to be. So they really want the districts to gather a couple of years of data before you start to make transitions in curriculum and instruction. Our baseline data scores were very much in line with where we are with ELA and math. In 5th grade, 55% of students were at or above level, which is a 3 or higher. In 8th grade, 51% of students were at or above. And in 11th grade, 61% of our students were at or above. So we can compare those in ELA and math in 5th and 8th, but the SAT isn't really a fair comparison. Right now, we only have district data. They have not yet released comparisons to other districts or comparisons to the state. They hope to do so in the next few months. So that might give us a little more information about, where we stand and where we are. But these are very initial numbers right now, and they'll give us a starting point as we look to set goals for next year. When it comes to the improvement plan, the science management team is really an important piece of this. So we don't sit down and say, okay, what do we want to do for the department improvement plan? But every meeting starts with a review of what our goals are for the department. And every time someone brings something forward, that helps narrow and focus and adjusts our goals about where we're going as a department. So then I take all that information that's been shared in the prior year and then use it to develop our district improvement plan, which is then shared back with the team and shared back with leaders in the science department, the department chairs and the subject area coordinators. So everybody implemented the NGSS-based curriculum, and some teachers were using some of the interim assessments. This year, they will all be using at least 1 interim assessment in their grade level. And we've already talked about and done an alignment at our August professional development about which interim assessments align with which units and when they should be given. And many teachers have already given the interim assessments. So the interims kind of give teachers an idea about how students will do when they take the assessment in the spring. So it's going to give us some important information. They are only formative. They're not meant to be summatives, but we'll be increasing those and looking at those. We'll be doing a lot more work with tagging the performance indicators. We made an adjustment to the indicators to help teachers tag them for reporting out to parents. So you'll be seeing that when you see the revised report cards. We've limited the number. We had anywhere from 10 to 24 performance indicators, and we decided to just really focus on 6 umbrella indicators that include both the cross-cutting concepts and the science and engineering practices, which is what our district graduation standards are based on. So that's what we'll be reporting out to parents, is at that high level what those standards are. And we'll continue to work with Wallingford STEM on getting more families to participate in our summer activities, in after-school activities, and around the community to really embrace STEM. We have like a core group of parents who like to participate in all the different activities that we have, and our goal as a team is to really push that out and try to get more people in the community involved in our STEM programs. That's all I have. Are there any questions?
Questions? Will you provide the board with those NGSS results, district-wide results?
Sure.
Thank you.
Just one clarification, the report card that is being changed is the elementary, middle school, and high school are staying the same. So this was just the elementary report card, I just wanted to clarify.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to go early.
Okay, CTE?
Good evening. I'm Rob Covey. I'm the Career and Technical Education Coordinator for the district. I always like to just kind of give this as an educational purpose. What is CTE? Career and Technical Education. A lot of times I'll hear people say, oh, you're career and technology. And it includes the business education, family and consumer sciences, medical career, CNA classes, technology, education, and the agricultural sciences. Unlike some of the other areas, we don't have centralized or standardized data. So for our improvement plan, we also don't approach this as saying, hey, what is our school improvement plan? A lot of the feedback and so forth that I've used to put together the improvement plan comes from meetings and discussions in department meetings, one-on-one discussions with teachers, and management team discussions as well. But like I said, we don't have standardized assessments. With the wide variety of courses and subjects, they don't exist. And a few years ago, this state of Connecticut had what they called the NOCTI test, and they phased that out. And one of the things I know my teachers didn't come forward and say straight up to me and say, hey, we want a standardized assessment. But I really felt we needed something to really assist with the conversations across departments and schools. And we started to use the precision exams. And last year, we completed the first year using them. And what the precision exams are industry-aligned, standardized tests. There's specific to the classes. So there could be a standardized test for a robotics class or a wood class or a culinary class, and which is a lot different than what we used to get even with the NOCTI test in the past, because they would give those assessments based on what they call the completer, where a student took 2 courses in a sequence. And they were sometimes difficult to even look at those results because a student could take a class as a freshman and then take the second course in the sequence as a junior or maybe even a senior. And some of the things that were being assessed, the kids didn't even work with for 2 years. And with it being more precise per class, we get a little bit of information, and we're really starting to see conversations about our student performance on these tests. In addition, the tests are really aligned to standards that you would expect kids to know when they take a class in CAD or something like that. And they provide a certificate if students meet a certain standards, and the standard is different depending on the test. But last year, in our first year doing this, we had 305 students that earned certificates. It's still a little difficult to tell exactly how many of those students actually took the test because of the way the testing works. But that's our goal for this year, is to really increase certificates. Last year, it was getting used to the system and establishing a baseline to see what we know about our students. and then going forward with that. So that's a big addition to what we've been doing. But along with other data, we still have the standardized and certificates that we give, for example, like our CNA students. Each year we have our students take the Prometrics test. We've had a 100% pass rate on that. We also have the indicators like the UConn ECE, or dual credit opportunities like UConn ECE, wildlife biology, veterinary science, medical terminology, which we just added for this year. In those particular classes also, there are other certifications. They really focus on those, like the veterinary assistant or the small animal tech, or they also have safe boating certificates, work safe certificates, et cetera, that we also use as opportunities to see what our success of students are. We continue to work on the increase of dual enrollment credits. We've had some challenges, but I really think we've kind of just are about to come over the top of the hill on that, where we'll have a lot of partnerships and dual credit opportunities. So right now, firmly in place are opportunities for students in the hospitality program to earn credits at Gateway Community College, but we're right on the edge for students at Middlesex Community College, Goodwin College, increased courses at Gateway Community College, and that is partly some changes that were made really into accepting our teachers as instructors. They made some change a few years back, making stricter requirements. And years ago, we actually had teachers who were accepted to teach these dual enrollment courses, and then they were actually suddenly then denied, and they recognized that there was really a mistake in that. So in addition, we've also are on the verge of this year, our first year with a Department of Labor apprenticeship program. So again, those are just some of the things that we're using to really examine our courses.
Erin, this would be a good time.
We have a question. Karen?
Could you just
Just
give
like-
me a little bit more information about these precision exams that are industry aligned? Are these, not only are they used for, our particular courses and what have you, are they actually used in businesses? Like if
They're
someone.
not like a specific certificate, like a NIMS credential or a CNA test, but they're aligned. They have partnerships, precision exam partners with a lot of the Cengage Learning, with Goodhart Wilcox, who write the textbooks that many of our classes we already use, and then they have industry partners, national standards that they're aligned to create these assessments and based on those national standards and any other credentials. So it's not a certificate that says, oh, you have OSHA 10, for example.
Right.
But it's something we've been working also within our business think tank for them to see what our students know and are able to do based on those standards. So for example, on say a culinary certificate, it would say student X has earned this certificate. If you turn it over on the back, it'll list knowledge of safety and sanitation, knowledge of tools and equipment, bread making, soups, sauces, whatever, and it lists all the standards on the back. So even though it has a certificate and it may not be a workforce certificate, it could be a good resume builder to say, well, these are the courses I've taken and this is what was in those courses. And precision exams is now working out another opportunity for kids to kind of build a resume where they can collect, if the same student took a course in business, for example, and took a test there in accounting, they can have an accounting certificate, but then maybe they were in technology education and they were in the wood shop, and it could list all their certificates, and it'll give a little bit more of a snapshot to say, oh, I took accounting or I took wood shop. It would actually list the things that are in those courses that the student specifically is demonstrating a level of mastery for.
Okay.
And this is advanced because the state of Connecticut is looking to get more into badging, giving kids badges based on the different pathways, as well as high school students as well as college students. So we are kind of at the forefront of this. I know Meriden also was utilizing precision exams. We've kind of came upon this together at the same time, and then Rob was able to negotiate a really good deal, which was great. So we see this as really a precursor to many more things coming. The good news is that another piece of data that we look at is the number of students who are accessing CTE courses, and that's gone up to 2% in a year, which is large. It's not large in 10% or anything, but it's 2% growth, which shows that there's momentum occurring. And, I think that that's a tribute to the staff really working hard, be it with Goodwin, be it with our AARP retirees. We have money coming from workforce finally from that grant that we worked on. So that will be coming, approximately $50,000 from that. So we're working on a variety of things. And there's never a dull moment in Rob's life. I'll just put it that way, because unfortunately I'm part of it.
I was going to say, because there's never a dull moment in Dr. Menzel's life.
What is the cost of the precision exams, and are they paid for by the individual student, or are we paying for them?
We bought access. It's a site license for the whole school, so we can give unlimited tests. Therefore it's no cost to the student, and it's really through our funding so that we can have access to that information.
Thank you.
So one of the things also, as you can see on the slide here, is that as we work with it, that not every, the goal is really to increase certification, but every course does not have an exam. And then some of our courses don't cover, because say for Introduction to Foods, they have an Intro to Foods test, but it would be a much longer course than our Introduction to Foods. So we still give that test, but we only look at, say, 3 of the standards. So in some cases, certification might be difficult for those students. So we're still examining on what can happen, and we're actually finding, so say a student took Intro to Foods, but then also took Food for Fitness, we'll give the same test, and they can actually see how they did after taking 2 foods courses and to certify, to get the certification. But I just wanted to if somebody was asking about how many students we have getting certificates, it's not always easy to tell exactly. The other thing we're working on for outcome is to really examine the rigor of our courses and looking at what rigor currently exists, but what opportunities there are for students to go further within a pathway and get to those more advanced opportunities. So one of those things that we have done is last spring we brought forward to you the advanced business class. We've also added the medical terminology as another opportunity. We continue to look for additional programs within the medical field, whether it's scrub tech, that's one of the main ones, or a farm tech opportunity. Next year we're going forward with the addition of AP computer science, and this would be the first time we've had an AP course in the CT area. So it really starts to look at, well, what's the pathway to having an AP, and all of what does it mean when people say AP in an area where every other course has the academic label. But we're really happy to be able to move forward with that. A lot of it, what was kind of causing a little bit of difficulty moving forward, was just getting our teachers up to that programming language, because we had switched over to Python, and then of course AP rolled out Computer Science A, which is Java, and it was like, do you just change right in the middle when they just started teaching Python? So we're in a very good place for that. And then one of the other ones, we're really looking at the level 3 management course for culinary. When we really look at what students are actually doing there, it's a high level of rigor and requires a lot of work. So we're actually really looking at, where traditionally it was always every course in CTE is academic, we're looking at, well, should that be honors, or should we have other honors alternatives, especially, for example, like in computer programming, where you have an academic computer programming, which is a great lead into the AP, but we have some kids that really excel in that as well. So we're really examining rigor and having some very fruitful and interesting conversations among the department to see, well, what is rigor? what is honors, what does that mean when you say honors and you put that label on a course, and it's been very interesting. So within that, one of the things for professional growth for teachers that we've been working on, just like other areas within the district, is our high impact teaching strategies. We've surveyed teachers and we've kind of centered on that we're really looking at planning and really working on setting learning targets and communicating those to students and establishing good assessments and rubrics aligned to learning targets, and then questioning techniques. Really, how are we getting students to think critically? One of the other things that we did last year, really to try and get people to be innovative and to think about what experiences our students have, we used the book What Schools Could Be by Ted Dintersmith. And he described that students excel and thrive in areas that are what he called peak. And PEAK is an acronym for purpose, essential skills, agency, and knowledge. So that there's a clearly defined purpose, that students understand the purpose of their learning, that there are real essential skills that are being taught. Students have agency and ownership to have that voice and choice into what they're doing. And then they really have the opportunity to dig deep in the knowledge acquisition. We did that last April, and we continue to have conversation about that, and we've seen some really interesting results as to the kinds of conversations that teachers are having in regards to that, and I feel like they feel motivated and inspired to suggest new and different things. For example, this year at Lyman Hall, they came in, they said, we want to have a student showcase of the work that they're doing. So on December 5th at the Parents' Night, they're having a showcase of some of the things that they're doing. They're looking at opportunities for scheduling and having courses that would go back to back or be scheduled next to them when we're moving with a manufacturing, machining and manufacturing mathematics course. And then we started to really talk about, well, where would it go in the schedule and what could you do if the same kids are in the same course and they were back to back? Could you just move between the course and teach math in the shop? And that goes along with that peak and what we're actually doing and allowing for agency. And we have some great new machines that are at Lyman Hall, our mills, and when we start to think about when we get up and running with that, it's really exciting. I feel like I've already been talking too much, so.
I know Mr. Ross has a question.
Yeah, just a couple questions. One, introduction to foods. Would you just explain that a little bit?
The Intro to Foods course?
Yeah.
Well, it's the first course in our culinary program. It's a half-credit course, and it's where students are really introduced to working in the kitchen, starting with things like safety and sanitation, moving on to the tools and equipment that they would use, and then getting into quick breads and moving on to baking and cooking and soups and stocks and it's the basis of the other courses.
Thank you. My other question, when do you expect the milling machines to be up and running?
Tomorrow, I would love them, but I know that this month we're getting the power, working on getting the power installed to them. There's a couple things that need to happen with them, is just getting them hooked up with the power and air, getting them all balanced and set with the technical rep from the company. But we've been also having some great conversations about opportunities for training to come in for teachers and so that we can get our students using them.
The intent last year when we brought this to you was that this year was going to be a training year and that the course was going to start in the fall of 2020 because we couldn't do it where you just drop the equipment and expect the teachers to use it. So we're working with Goodwin Community College. Rob has been working diligently to get a few of our staff members to be adjunct status there, so they would actually take a course, teach a course, and then be able to teach that course in the fall at no additional cost to our students. So looking at it a little bit differently, as we explained. So we're on schedule. It's just that, that we're retrofitting a space, which isn't always easy to do. But there's a lot of excitement around these machines.
Yeah, we
That's
had
for certain.
we definitely had the opportunity and to seize the opportunity to get them and then put them in place. And like Dr. Menzo said, retrofitting the space, moving equipment, really some equipment that was sitting there unused, where we've established a plan of what will happen and how we'll use that equipment moving forward. It's really interesting because probably the year 2000, somewhere around there, there was a decision that made that technology education was really going to move towards what we think of when we say technology today, which is computers. And some of those old traditional, what was industrial arts, some of those machines were just kind of pushed to the side. In some places, they were discarded and put on the discard list. But we did have at Lyman Hall machines that were still there. And so we've gone through to really kind of look at what's working and how we can move them around and put them into a space right alongside high-tech mills, which is really interesting and exciting. So I think Wallingford is in a really unique place because there aren't other places that, one, still have some of that old machinery and have the new machinery that we have currently or moving forward with.
And we're not looking to necessarily replicate the program at both schools in the sense that it'll be offered at both schools, but today we were even having a conversation with the administrators about scheduling it at the same time so that we could use the bus that we have with the medical students, so we could bring the students from Sheehan over to Lyman Hall to experience it, because to replicate that space at Sheehan is not,
Crazy, yeah.
it's not logistically feasible, and it's not financially appropriate. And so with the 38 students we have in advanced manufacturing, hopefully that'll grow next year, but that's a pretty healthy number, considering I'm hearing that some of the programs that we're supposed to start in the state have maybe 10 students in them this year. Then there's another one that didn't open up yet. So
We were just having a conversation about, I think that
We're
we
doing
have a
well.
pretty good approach to what we want to do, that with taking a concept that I think a lot of people have, but I think we're moving forward with a better actionable approach, I think. And then some of the partnerships we have, it just makes it unique to anyone. And with AARP, the retired mentors that we've made contact with, who are so energetic and so excited to come in and work with our students and our teachers. I don't think anybody else is doing that, so that's exciting. And even the connection we have with Goodwin College to come down and train us. They've been an incredible resource because, frankly, I know nothing about machining and manufacturing. So we have these mills, and I find myself very often saying, they'll ask me questions, and I said, I know nothing. So start from the very beginning, and they're incredibly supportive, all the contacts and connections we've made.
So, the current junior class is our first cohort of kids, that 38 that are going through the manufacturing program?
No.
So do we have data on the ones that have graduated or gotten jobs?
We don't have.
It's not a cohort.
Because it's not just juniors, it's juniors and seniors.
Okay.
Once we get the next two classes in, which will be the math class, and then there's gonna be an advanced manufacturing class, then we'll have a sequence. So then we'd have a cohort. In terms of collecting the data on those graduates, we haven't gone that far at this point because it really was a loose first two cohorts.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that we had just talked about actually with the teachers and also with Kim and Jane in career college and career specialists, because we did have a couple go through the pipeline program last year.
Mm-hmm.
What they found out is, to be honest, which we want students to find out, that it wasn't necessarily the career for them. But they found out in a way that it didn't end up costing them additional time or money. But we do plan to collect that data. We were just talking about that because once we get the sequence, we're trying to set it up. I think the goal would be, and Rob and I always compare this, it's like CNA and foods. There's like usually a 2 to 3 course sequence. So we'll have that sequence next fall.
Okay.
which will be really nice.
And even like to use CNA as an example, many of our CNA students aren't finishing the program and then going out and looking for employment. And yes, we're trying to make that clear that that's an opportunity for students, but they're still learning about that opportunity. And even many of our students that are taking the manufacturing course are not necessarily jump into the workforce. But we're starting to really see a lot of conversation shifts in regards to the opportunities that there are. So we can see that students are thinking, well, wait a minute, I can go into a certificate program for manufacturing and I can start and have a job right away, and it's something that I'm interested in, versus maybe going to college and float around for a few years and maybe rack up debt. The number of students that I've been hearing lately talk about student loans is really impressive. So it's shifting, and we're, like Dr. Menzo said, we're not there where we've been tracking that data, but we're having conversations about.
And the key thing to our program is that we're not fixed to necessarily a certain piece of technology. Yes, we have the mills, but we're teaching them the other skills, because actually advanced manufacturing, from what I heard today, is not on the rise in Connecticut as it was the last few years. Wallingford, there's still a need for employment, which is good, but statewide, it's been well surpassed by the medical fields. So the thing is that we want to make sure, the key thing that we can give any of our students in our career technical education programs, or in all of our programs, is are a lot of the soft skills, or industry 4.0 skills, the agility, the perseverance, the commitment to task, the collaboration, the communication, the cooperation, all of those skills, which those are embedded so nicely into all of our pathways. So I think we have to be agile also. One of the things that Rob and I had a great conversation about last week was simulated work environments within the classroom. So in our CT courses, potentially putting in punch clocks. You know, they have to punch in when they get into class. They have to go to their stations. They have to get into some of those environments, because, yes, salaried employees don't necessarily punch a clock, but there is a timeliness factor to be a salaried employee. There's a responsibility factor. So I think we positioned ourselves well. Some places are really going very traditional model of creating a path that it would be very difficult to deviate from. And we don't want to lock ourselves into it, because we have to be nimble, because in order to make our students the best prepared citizens upon graduation, we have to have that agility. So we're really being thoughtful, and I really have to say, I can't say enough about Rob as well. I mean, he's really done an amazing job, and this is not an area of expertise for either Rob or myself, but Rob always amazes me at what he's saying in meetings, because either he's faking it or he really does study, which I think he does study, but he's doing a remarkable job.
So the goal of our advanced manufacturing program, and partnered with Goodwin College, they're getting credits towards Goodwin's advanced manufacturing program. So instead of 10 months, in essence, it could be taking them 7 months. Is that the goal?
Correct. They
Okay.
could end up with
15 credits?
It's
I think
15
it's-
credits.
15, yeah.
That's one of the challenges
It
that
could
you'll
be-
see.
They're earning 15 credits through us.
That's the goal.
Yes,
We're not there yet, but that's the goal.
that's
soon.
the goal.
And that's in talking with Goodwin, it's interesting. Colleges also rate their success on kids or students that complete their programs. And you'll find that students will start a program, do a semester or two, and get a job and not finish the program. So it's a win-win for all of us, is because our students can get 15 credits before they even begin, which is an incredible opportunity financially, but they're also getting a jump on the program, and because those kids that take a semester are already employable. So we know that those students that can get those dual credits will be employable if they choose to be at graduation, or they can actually move on and get an associate's, or continue on to a 4-year degree.
Thank you. Gratio?
So I had the opportunity a couple weeks ago to actually go to Hartford and attend one of the community of practice groups. And they had a presentation on Perkins, and then we all had to break into sessions, and we had to talk about really what do we do CTE-wise in our districts. And by and far, we just blew away all the other districts that were there. Their chins were like on the table as far as, you do what? AARP? Oh my gosh, that's a phenomenal idea. We had like the big Post-its up on the board, because we don't have this kind of stuff up there in Hartford, but the big Post-its there, we filled our table, just totally filled it, and it was like 99% Wallingford ideas. So everything from the Perkins stuff, and Dr. Menzo, what you said about our district having 38 versus 10, there are a lot of districts there that said, well, I guess we would just have to partner with the closest technical high school to like ship kids there to take some of these technical classes and come back. And like, how would we ever be able to do CTE type of programming in-house? And they just struggled even with the idea and the concept of it. So to think that we're so far along by actually having these opportunities, not just for our students, but for them to earn credits and think about next steps. And we're, by and large, further along than, I'll say, the majority, if not all, of the districts that were in the room. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wellness.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tony Loomis. I'm the Wellness Curriculum Coordinator for Wallingford Public Schools. Wellness encompasses school counseling. It encompasses the Career Center coordinators. It encompasses the health teachers, physical education teachers, and also the district climate. So quite a big umbrella. This particular plan was a result of discussions with staff from each of those areas, and it was driven heavily by data. And so the data really supported a lot of the different initiatives. Some of that data, just a few things to highlight in the plan. At the end of each year, we give graduation surveys out, and we've seen an increase in career and technical education, students going that route. So it really falls in line with what Rob Covey was going over and CTE and that area. And so I work closely with him throughout all of this. Between 2017, or from 2017 to 2019, we saw a 4% decrease in the amount of kids going to a 2 or 4 year college, and instead we saw an increase in those students picking employment or picking a career and technical education background or schooling. And so we're still looking into those numbers and figuring out how we can better serve this group of students that's going in this direction. Another set of data points that we've included has been the Career Center coordinators, their information, and the different events that they do. They continue to fine-tune different events that they have, but also adding more. From 2017 to 2019, they've increased the amount of trips that they've taken with students. This year, they're adding one major event, a career fair, a district-wide career fair. They're helping coordinate that, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Other survey data to highlight the Connecticut School Health Survey. That was recently re-administered for the 4th time. End of October, we administered that, and to all the students in the both high schools. And vaping was a new set of questions on this year's survey. So we're looking forward to seeing the data from that and learning how we can better help our students. Mental health in the past has been an issue that is shown as an area of concern, and that was highlighted not just by us, but I know the Wallingford Health Department has focused in on that too. So this survey data is going to help the entire community come together and try and solve some of these problems, some of these issues. One last data point that I would like to highlight as an area of need was the amount of students receiving physical activity amounts, the daily recommended physical activity amounts. This isn't just in school, this is total, in school, out of school, during the school year, outside of the school year, all encompassing, but only 44% of our students said that they were getting the amount of exercise that's actually recommended. So that was another area that we wanted to address with this plan. Last but not least, the district climate surveys are part of the wellness data. And last year was an off year for our climate surveys, which means this year we are going to be administering the surveys to parents, staff, and students. The window is going to be mid-January to mid-February, so I'm currently working right now with the district climate committee to develop those survey questions. And my focus, and what I've challenged each building to do, is increase participation, particularly with the parents, but also with staff. Our staff numbers were about 46% at last climate surveys, and I'm confident that we're going to get those numbers up. And so we are working on different strategies in order to make the survey more targeted, more specific. And we're also, again, challenging the buildings, come up with a stronger plan for how we're going to get those surveys out there to people in order to increase that participation. So the data first led us to develop some student outcomes. The first outcome, students will exercise effectively and safely through the use of heart rate monitors. We recently purchased heart rate monitors for our middle schools and our high schools. And the word effectively is used very specifically. The CDC has done a lot of research and shown that we get physiological benefits of exercise once we hit the 50% mark of our maximum heart rate. Maximum heart rate, that's the most that our hearts can beat. So at 50% of our maximum heart rates, that's when we start to see physiological benefits, whether it's a decrease in cholesterol, higher aerobic capacity, more calories burned. All that happens at 50%. So that's effectively. But we also want students to learn how to exercise safely. If they're too close to that maximum mark, if they're too close to that maximum heart rate, they could have a heart attack. They could sustain some serious injuries, even death. It has happened before. And so we want students to understand that sweet spot of exercise, the target heart rate zone, 50 to 90%. These heart rate monitors are going to be a wonderful way to not only teach students that concept, but really help our PE teachers understand our students better and work with the students more effectively, more efficiently. It can help individualize each PE lesson for students and gives us really an insight, a window into a student's heart, literally and figuratively. Another student outcome, students will learn about careers earlier and more regularly with an improved student success plan. Last year, with the help of Rob Covey, we revamped the curriculum planning guide, and we made it a true guide more than just a program of studies. And so now we're looking to expand the exposure to that curriculum planning guide to younger and younger students. There's 3 simple questions that we are figuring out the best way to get across to students and have students reflect on in order to think about a career. Number 1, what do you enjoy? What are you passionate about? Number 2, is there a job for that? Can you get paid to do that? And then number 3, what skills do you need to be successful at that? And so through different strategies and techniques, one of which I had started to mention, the district-wide career fair, we're going to be teaching these concepts, these ideas, and again, exposing careers to kids at a very young age. Our elementary students, understandably, have a very limited knowledge and view of what a career is and what different jobs they can have when they get older. They only know what they've been exposed to. I could be a fireman, I could be a teacher, I could be a doctor. There are millions of possibilities for jobs and something that they can get paid to do. And we're going to start a lot earlier exposing them to that. And through Naviance and through their student success plan, they're going to be exploring those and in hopes that when they leave, when they graduate from Wallingford Public Schools, they have a very strong path that they're taking and they're confident with what they're going to do with the rest of their life. The last student outcome is to feel more connected to school. A couple years ago, we had a large group of students express a very strong desire to make their schools safer, to do something after the Parkland shooting down in Florida. And we gathered about 50 students at the town hall, and we led them through a brainstorming exercise to help them figure out their thoughts and what are we capable of doing, what can we do. And the students themselves came up with the idea of, we want to make our schools softer. The schools are being made safer from the administrative, from the teacher and administrative perspective, but what can the students do? They can make the schools softer. By softer, more welcoming, looking out for each other. And so this year we have partnered with the Sandy Hook Promise. They've already given a presentation, a large presentation to all the students in the middle schools and the high schools called It Starts With Hello. That's recognizing a student that may be isolated, maybe on the outskirts, and just approaching that student, saying hello and seeing if they can just be a friend or be friendly to them. We have sent a group of students from each of our secondary schools to a training, a specific leadership training based on making our schools safer, making our schools softer, more welcoming. And they're tasked with coming back and growing this and taking their training and really implementing it. So that's another big outcome this year, students feeling more connected to the schools. And that leads to the adult actions. And this is all going to be supported and led through very targeted professional development that will help the student outcomes. As far as the heart rate monitors go, already teachers have participated in a number of professional development opportunities specific to utilizing the heart rate monitors in our situations. For example, one of the smaller PDs that we worked on composing a letter that's going to be sent home to let parents know, hey, this new technology is going to be used, and we want you to be aware of the benefits of it and what we're doing with it, and any questions, please feel free to ask. The district climate committee has gotten together, and we've already started to work on, again, composing our questions and trying to be consistent across the district. In the past, we've had over 50 climate surveys handed out, whether they be to parents or staff or students. And so we're going to try and streamline and get that number down a little bit more. So we're looking for each level to have similar questions. And so we can kind of see across town how things are going. Also, as far as professional development goes, our school counselors are working on creating a needs assessment. They're going to be asking students, how can we serve you better, and what do you need? We were thinking of writing curriculum this year for the school counselors. However, while the ASCA, American School Counseling Association, has standards, the Connecticut School Counseling Association, in conjunction with the State Department of Education, is building a new school counseling comprehensive program booklet, which will come out early next year, and that will have Connecticut standards for school counselors along with indicators. The national standards do not have any indicators, and so between that new information and the needs assessment that we're working on building and administering, that's going to help us next year write some curriculum. We are writing curriculum currently for the elementary schools health and physical education programs. So that work is happening currently. Also, we are working hard to throw a district-wide career fair come April. April 21st will be our first of hopefully many district-wide career fairs. In the past, we've had up to 5 different career fairs, one at each secondary school, and we also had an exemplary program at one of the elementary schools. And so instead of tapping the well and the same well over and over, of getting community members a part of this, number one, and number two, to help broaden this message to all students, in a more coordinated effort, we're going to be pulling in elementary students, we're going to be pulling in middle school students, we're going to be pulling in high school students for one big day over at the Oakdale Theater for a career fair. It's going to be pretty spectacular. Last but not least, the district climate surveys. Again, that's an adult action that we're working on, and the window for that is going to be mid-January to mid-February. I expect a quick turnaround based on a more streamlined survey, a quick turnaround of that data. So I'll be able to present that to you later on in the school year. So.
Ms. Levesque?
Yes, getting back to the areas in need of improvement,
Yes.
on the 2017 survey, I was pretty alarmed, and I brought this up when that was reviewed,
Yeah.
about the dating violence and the sexual abuse by boy-girlfriend in the past 12 months. Do we address this in any way in curriculum after that?
We do address it. We do address it in our health curriculum, both at the middle school and at the high school, and we are exploring ways to expand upon it currently. I'm looking into the Susan B. Anthony Foundation, perhaps to have them come in and do some more services. So that's kind of part of Aaron's Law, which is required health education that we need to be providing K through 12. So yes, it is addressed. No, not enough, and we're working on that.
Right, because in looking at the trend from the 2013 through
Yep.
2017, there's definitely an increase in at least on that survey, the reported percentile
So,
increase.
That was one of the, that was a clear factor that's going to play into the new health course that's provided to juniors and seniors. When this is just overall data, but when you look specifically at the breakdown of 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, we see higher numbers at the 11th and 12th grades. And so part of that curriculum, which we are working on this year and next year for implementation in 2020, 2021, 2022, will be dating violence once we get the cohort to that point.
The other question I have is, when do you anticipate the 2019 health survey results to be available to us?
I have been in constant contact with Celeste George, the epidemiologist from the State Department of Health, and I've been assured that we'll be able to get the results back a lot more quickly than we have in the past. You may recall back in 2018, yeah, because it was 2017 we administered the previous one, and we didn't get the results back
Right.
until mid-2018.
Yes.
And so again, that was a concern that I brought up with her, and the response was, we're going to make sure we turn it around a little more quickly. So I don't beyond continuing to badger, which I will do. I don't know if I have a better answer than it's a high priority to get that information
Right,
back, and
right.
so.
Well, I think it's to the district's credit that we administer this, and then we use it to inform what we're teaching our students.
There is a graduate professor down at Southern Connecticut State University, just one of many examples that highlights Wallingford Public Schools because of the data that we collect and how we use this data to drive programming and help not just Wallingford Public Schools, but other community partnerships. And so it speaks extremely highly of Wallingford, of the Board of Ed, of the community, what we're doing with this. And I'm honored to be able to work with this data, and I'm grateful. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Mr. Ross?
Yeah, a couple of questions. What's Health Wallingford 2020?
Healthy Wallingford 2020?
You've got Health Wallingford 2020, one of the outside organizations we're working with.
That is recently, very recently, been renamed to the Wallingford Health Community Resource Alliance. The name continues to shift. Healthy Wallingford 2020, that was the initiative set forth by the mayor's office, and it's a community partnership. I attend those meetings regularly. The school, the Board of Ed always has a representative, either Dr. Menzo and myself. The YMCA attends those. The Wallingford Health Department attends those. Youth and Social Services, the Wallingford Library. I apologize if I'm missing other groups. The Senior Center representative is usually there. So we meet, I would say, quarterly, and we have specific goals. We have a website that we're working on, and it's really to try and improve the wellness of the community. One of the events that committee specifically threw was the Community Day at the end of the summer, right near the linear trail. And so that kind of encompasses what the group does. It's about spreading awareness and helping people out. The Eat, Play, Unplug initiative came from Healthy Wallingford 2020. So I'll certainly update that name in the wellness plan since the committee just changed.
Mr. Ross, it was originally, it predates Mr. Loomis's joining the district. What happened was the state requires every town to have a health improvement plan. So at that time, Ms. Hazelwood was our health department director. And so she, myself, Mr. Turner, the coalition, the mayor's office all came together because we had to look at, identify using data that was provided to us from Mid-State Medical, look at the data of the citizens of Wallingford, what were the areas of improvement. We came up with a plan. That's how we actually were initially able to get the wellness position, because we talked about how the coordination needed to occur. So it started back, I want to say 2015, if I'm not mistaken. And it's been really progressing along. Now the new health director is part of that process. So it's really a credit to, I have to say, the health department, because they really got the ball rolling, and then we just kept it going. The board, probably about 5 years ago, made a commitment to pay a portion of a stipend to have somebody come in and help facilitate. That person then was taken over by the actual health department. So there's another person in the health department helping in this area.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Vaping. What's the progress on vaping, and where are we? How do we feel we're doing?
So that other person that Dr. Menzel just mentioned from the Wallingford Health Department, we've been in talks with them to have them come to the schools and provide some information, and which they've already started to do. So we have someone from the Wallingford Health Department coming in and setting up a table during office hours, and so students can come by and learn more information. We have started to add that to vaping to our curriculum, and so I know at the middle school I just observed a lesson where it was on tobacco and nicotine, and the teacher was sure to talk about misconceptions with vaping because it's so new. And so that's in our curriculum at the middle schools and the high school, discussing it. And again, that partnership through Healthy Wallingford 2020, through the Wallingford Health Department, having this person come in. In the past, when smoking was a real issue, we had a Smoke Stoppers program. And so we are, again, working with the Wallingford Health Department to try and have a similar program for vaping. So it's still a major issue, I feel, but I think we are taking the right steps to try and address it. Last year, a lot of what we did was educational, bringing in speakers to speak to the schools and try and combat a lot of the misinformation around vaping. And now I see a shift as far as going from educational, which is continuing in our health classes, and they've taken over that mantle, to helping out students that are struggling with this, because it's such a major issue. I'm sure you know one Juul's one of the most common types of e-cigarettes. Has the equivalent nicotine of 20 cigarettes, and the research shows that students Teenagers typically use one joule a day or 1 joule a day and a half. So kids are basically taking in the same amount of nicotine as they would smoking a pack of cigarettes in a day.
Where do you feel we're at as opposed to a year ago in the schools with vaping? Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? Is it
Yeah, I think it's getting better, but it's still a problem that's growing throughout not just our community, but throughout society. It's getting worse before it's getting better. So even despite that, we are addressing it better in the schools.
We had, I believe, some people from Yale University come in and give a program. Are we still using them? 'Cause I sat in on part of one, and I thought it was excellent.
This year, I don't have anyone scheduled just yet from Yale to come in, but we're certainly open to that. To get back to your question, are we doing better or worse? Students have even come forward to say, you know what, we recognize this is a problem. I'm thinking of Lyman Hall. I was speaking with the principal, Joe Corso, about this, and he shared that there's a group of students that think this is a big issue, and they are coordinating to try and bring awareness themselves and help their peers to stop. So again, it is a big issue, but I do think we're going in the right direction, and we're better off than we were a year ago.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Loomis.
Just for the public, Ms. McKay will be here at some point. I just received an update that they're still waiting for the executive session at Town Council to conclude before the meeting can begin. So they're running a little late, but I assured them that if we finish this meeting up, I can do operations, no problem. So we'll be good. But I just wanted to give you that update because they have been concerned that they were missed. Ms. Belizzi, Mr. Barone, and Ms. McKay.
Thank you. Mr. Arcero?
All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Rob Arcero, proud principal of Moses Y. Beach Elementary School. I heard a small rumor that after 11 schools, you guys were missing talking about STAR, so here I am to punctuate that message. In all sincerity, you have multiple packets of data points, my school in addition to the rest of the schools, but I want to cherry pick some pride points and points of growth just because it is pretty in-depth. I would be remiss, though, if I didn't start first with just framing Moses Y, obviously, as a primary school, grades pre-K through grade 2, walking back through, as many of my colleagues did, talking about our mission statement and who we are as a school and our beliefs. So we're looking to inspire students through engaging experiences that leads all learners to pursue and discover their personal best. It's connected to our school motto. And the belief statements below really frame not just learning, but an approach to learning that we feel very strongly about at Moses Y. Developmentally appropriate practice is something that doesn't just talk about the content of what we're set about to teach, but really doing so in the context of understanding students as learners or as small humans and where they are in that developmental process. Recognizing that our school obviously has students ages 3 to 8. That's quite a developmental spectrum. So that's something that we're always cognizant of. As an early childhood learning setting, really we look to the prerequisite skills that are necessary to establish learning behaviors. So that social emotional focus is really important. How we teach is just as important as what we teach. So the process of delivery is just as great as the content itself. So that goes back to making engaging learning environments, because we know that great cognitive growth, so when we're looking at student achievement, really occurs through social interaction. So boys and girls, students with each other, as well as between the staff and students. In regards to staff, another belief statement, how we work together as a faculty, as adults, are what's referred to in research as collective efficacy, is really important. Building that culture or that mindset among the faculty really lays a foundation for the work that we do. In other words, just that belief of that's how we do it here at Moses Y. Reaching kids that may have difficulties or struggling learners, that's what we're good at. That's what we do. And building that sense of belief within the faculty is really important to establish that culture and those beliefs. Also looking to what we believe and know about our children. We know that it's a very diverse world these days, and thinking outside of ourselves or our own experiences as educators, recognizing our biases in those experiences and celebrating diversity overall is huge, because as Sashi pointed out earlier in her presentation, we have students that span pin dots all over that world map, and they're in our schools, and that's important to remember. And then finally, our final belief statement, partnering with families. Families are not just an end consumer, really the strong belief that they're key levers, not just passive consumers for what their child's experience is, but they should be an active participant in what that looks like. One small note is even looking at preschool and the new approach through the State Department in terms of the assessment that's used for preschool, evaluating their learning standards, one major element is really taking parent input and feedback into what children can or can't do when you consider their developmental milestones. So really taking that and moving forward with that logic that it's really important what parents bring to the table as partners. So I mentioned ages 3 to 8. And when you look at a primary school, 36% of our school's population is brand new to the school experience. So that brings with it some unique challenges, but also some great growth opportunities. And what I'd like to do tonight is unpack both what our student outcomes are, so those are our goals for the coming year for Moses Y, and look at our action steps in terms of our plan to remediate that. I do want to pull up a first data slide, and I know it may be a little bit different, but it's on page 4. Last year, in my presentation, I talked about some of the measures that we're using in a primary setting to try to leverage and make sense of some of these other measures that we have. So I opened up and joked a little bit about STAR, but really there's a continuum of skills that are needed in a primary school in reference or in particular to literacy, and that's something I want to make a point about tonight. The initial pass scores last year, you can see on page 4. There's a pre and post bar graph that talks about where students were in the beginning of the year and where they were in the end of the year. This is something that's not necessarily captured early on in IRLA, which is the district's reading spectrum, but something that's really important to consider. It's all oral language, and I know some of my colleagues, primary colleagues, spoke about the importance of oral language, and I want to commend the board for looking ahead, and Angela Bucari for working in the curriculum office for looking at how we capture that data using the PAST. So the PAST breaks apart, you see 8 skills listed here, ranging from preschool through kindergarten, and our students, upon entry, you can see just made phenomenal growth, all high 90 percentile, 89th percentile, and we're really proud of that. When I said about the goal for looking at the past skills for this coming year, I want to draw a contrast because initially we were just looking at how students would do with kindergarten. The data that you see on page 6 shows that kindergarten students last year not only mastered what you saw on that slide for page 4, but actually substantially exceeded and mastering the percentages that you see on page 6 of the bar graph, which are first grade skills. So this year, as a faculty, we're committed to taking a look at some of those oral language skills and really raising the bar higher, because we believe that when you look at some of those skills, that really sets the path about trying to break into code or text. So a lot of these things are just literally oral language before you even get to a kindergarten student holding a book. So that's really important, and something that I know my kindergarten team and now my first grade team is starting to use to some extent, and they're really proud of that. Student outcomes for this year in regards to academics. I just referenced the kindergarten piece, but we're also looking at increasing and advancing our STAR scores. So on page 10, our first grade cohort, we're looking to demonstrate a 10% growth in the number of probable readers. So students that are scoring a scale score of over 775, while at the same time making sure that we're decreasing students that are performing in that 25th percentile or below. Those are our intervention students, and we want to see a decrease in that by 10%. After each screen window, we conduct a gap analysis, myself and the intervention team, and we do a debrief with classroom teachers. And what we do is we make sure that all students that are in that 25th percentile and below are in fact receiving intervention services. If they're not, we make certain to develop an appropriate tier 1, 2, or 3 plan so that students can close that gap as needed. In second grade, our cohort, we're looking to move our students through ERLA levels in the 1B and 2B range, which are first grade skills. And we want to focus and leverage this goal to make sure that teachers are taking advantage of the foundational skills toolkits to target those students that are in the intervention levels. Again, we're looking to see a decrease in the students that are performing below the 25th percentile in STAR by 10%, while at the same time having a more moderate or aggressive increase in the number of students that are performing at benchmark. So that's our 50th percentile in STAR reading by at least 15%. In regards to math, our first grade cohort, we're looking for similar decreases and increases across those bands. So once again, making sure that students are in that intervention range, moving those kids into the proficiency band by 10 and 15% respectively, and that's for first and second grade as cohorts. I have a number of staff members that are piloting Confluency and a new interview approach to really make sure that we can understand students' mathematical thinking, and we're excited that there's really good feedback so far in terms of unpacking and understanding students' approaches and being able to plan from that respectively. Last year, we hosted math satellite classrooms, and I cannot underestimate the importance of the coaches, both literacy and math. We hosted satellite classroom experiences where other teachers got to come in and witness best practice, lessons in progress, co-taught with the coaches, and really the power to be able to move practice is invested not by an assessment or by a program, but investing in teachers and making sure that you can grow teacher practice. And research has shown, and there's some linked references in here that you've seen in the past, I'm sure through Angela's presentation, that show that that coaching approach and model is the single greatest effective strategy to improve teacher practice. So we're looking to expand on that this coming year. Any questions in regards to the academic component?
I have a ton, but do you want to go through the whole thing and then I'll start?
I'm going to switch to SEL, so if you want to address the academic piece, you sure can.
I have a ton for those too.
No,
So academic, sure, we can go ahead with questions now.
Whatever you want. Want to go to the end?
go ahead, you can ask questions then.
Okay. When we look at the data for the students, we know that there was a large, I'm on page 4. Do we, first of all, page 4, I would love to see in the spring for all. Pre-K to 2, for past data from fall to spring, that would be awesome. Do we know, when we look at any of the data in here, how our transient students are reflected? So we know that there's like that 800 something kids that kind of float in and out of the district, spread across all the grade levels. And I mean, this is awesome data because it's narrowed down to one school, and I don't know, I see that you only have a 2 student difference, but when we think about 800 students moving in and out of the district, what's the impact of that to our STAR, or to our ERLA, or to our PAST?
Right, these aren't matched cohort.
So there's really no way to do that,
So
is
unless
there?
the school pinpoints individual student results,
Which we want to do.
because even the 102 to 100, that could be -5, -7 +5, they're
I guess
different
just
kids.
thinking of who moves in and out in the course of a school year,
Right.
that fluctuation can
It
really
does.
impact. Because
Yes, it can.
whoever moves out isn't necessarily what you're getting for a student coming in. So
Correct.
that's why I was just trying to wrap my head around that. Okay.
I think one of the benefits this year too, because when I shared last year that this was a pilot and publicly praised my kindergarten team and kudos for really taking this on and trying to unpack what skills we thought were prerequisite skills before we even start measuring literacy. You know, the phonological approach and all of the PA skills that came about from the ReadCon training that teachers did. This is something that the seed was planted and evolved over time, and now all schools will capture this on a screen, which will be good because students at least moving between schools, and in the future, you'll at least have some baseline data, but it's hard to match up directly right now what that would look like.
I get it. At what point can we use this past data for students at the end of kindergarten who aren't where we want them to be at the end of kindergarten? How do we utilize that going into first grade, which obviously that's where we start looking more about the phonics and alphabet skills, letter sounds, and it moves from that oral into the literacy piece of it. 'Cause
Absolutely.
We've never had this before, and I know it's probably in your head or probably even already outlined in practice, how you're gonna use this with the first grade teachers.
Yes. So the benefit, we do have some pretty elaborate spreadsheets, and we've already started to make some correlations. When you look at some of these skills, for first grade folks, if you have a student that's in intervention or behind and really stalled somewhat in what we refer to as the yellow level, just think it's kindergarten, early part of kindergarten. Teachers already have connections to what those skills are throughout the yellow level. So for example, patterns in print, concept of a word, so print and spaces in words, letter sound correspondence. You're starting to move into that print piece and away from just the phonological awareness piece. And you're right, that's where the rubber meets the road in first grade. So these spreadsheets are available now to take at least the cohort that we have currently and move forward and then provide that data to classroom teachers to make those connections. We're also having lots of great goal-setting conversations right now, and even looking at how teachers are documenting within the ERLA framework. So again, our reading district measure and connecting some of these other skills or measures that they're using to substantiate where kids are within their current reading level. So for example, matching up that past data where a student is leaving in kindergarten and connecting it to what skills are required in early first grade as they make that transition.
Okay, so you talked about ReadCon.
Yes.
And I know you used Reading League. Do you
Re-
do Reading League?
Not reading league.
No,
I'm
okay,
not
so
familiar with that.
do we have ReadCon at all the schools right now, or do we have groups
Read-
for this year?
ReadCon was a couple years ago, and the shift from the State Department changed its focus. So early on, 2 to 3 years ago, when we set
Longer
out,
than that, I think. I was still at Rock Hill, so every
Oh, wow.
school had at least one, if not two teams that went to ReadCon.
yeah,
And, you know, gathered a lot of information from that. And then each year, while the state has changed it, it is offered, but schools have not, have kind of settled into what they're doing and have not sent a team, as far
Well,
as I know.
the focus has shifted because we looked at a follow-up year in ReadCon. The year after its kickoff, I think it stalled for a bit, so they actually didn't take any new registrations. So we were a little disappointed, but the work continued in terms of the cohort that Mrs. Latour described. So we did send a couple different teams. They came back, and there was a real coordinated effort on the part of faculty. So those lead teachers came back, our interventionists, had groups of teachers work with them. We did it cross grade level. And then they started to work with the rest of their grade level colleagues and kind of seed the information and share. The model is reminiscent of now what we're trying to replicate with Literacy How. That work, it continued in terms of the model, so they were working in grade levels, they were working during building-based professional development days, they were also working during staff meeting time and making sure that they were going ahead and using that time to plan as grade level groups and do cross grade level work. My hope and the vision now looking ahead, we already have that structure, and Literacy How is here with the district, and teachers have given amazing feedback, even hearkening back saying, yes, this feels like ReadCon, the information we're getting is great, and people are looking to share and make some of those connections now.
Because that was where I was going, is I didn't know if ReadCon was duplicative in the sense of the format that Literacy House doing, where it's you go in, you coach, and then you kind of seed it, and it gets spread from there, or if it was different and more intense tier 1 type of instruction.
The
So-
last, because it's been a while now, as folks point out, but when ReadCon shifted, when it did come back, the Rising Phoenix had a focus on special education specifically.
Right, and
And-
alliance districts.
Yes, an alliance district. So not wanting to try to retrofit the work we had already done, we kept moving ahead and doing that same work in the structure that I just described earlier by working in grade levels and cohorts, using our interventionists as those literacy facilitators, and just kept moving forward with what's that next best practice. So interventionists looking at new research by Tim Shanahan and Kilpatrick and some of those anchor texts to kind of continue that work as a learning cohort, the faculty that is, rather than just look to an outside group to kind of lead us down that path. It was our jump start, essentially, and the work continued after that. I think Literacy How now will be invigorating in that the structured literacy model, which is one of our action steps, to really make sure we can parlay and take that experience to improve practice in regards to literacy instruction.
And then you had this worksheet as a link in your school improvement plan.
Yes.
I think I know what this is, but could you explain it?
Sure. So the Excel worksheet that you're looking at, we have, we take data 3 times a year, and that's something that it did start a few years ago. This year, for the first time in the district, all kindergartners, kindergarten classrooms are taking that data. So that worksheet was developed a few years. It's been tweaked over time, but it's in a place now where you can really see the progression and the sequence of skills. Again, it happens 3 times a year, and the beauty is when you click through those tabs from fall, winter to spring, you can really start to see it light up from red initially, what kids don't have, and then just light up green in terms of those skills coming online and kids being proficient in the area of phonological awareness.
Does this drive your win blocks?
Yes.
That's
Not only
what I was trying to
win
get at.
blocks, thinking win blocks as a tier 2 time and time that teachers are doing small group, but tier 1 time. So strategy groups, one-on-one groups, looking at some of the skills connected in ERLA in terms of what kids can or can't do and next steps in planning on the part of the teacher, absolutely. Because remember, we don't screen formally in the way we do with STAR in the upper grades. So this really gives baseline data for the kindergarten teachers to begin and hit the ground running. In the same way that it's also helpful for a student that has a deficit in skills regardless of a kindergarten level, whether it's at first grade, whether there's a specific learning disability and a student is starting earlier on in their reading progression, teachers will use that likewise.
Ms. Levesque has a question.
Okay, following up on that, when you're talking about these students that are scoring below 530 on the early literacy enterprise tests,
Yes,
how
that was in my rationale.
How difficult is it for the teacher who is having students enter with so much disparity? I mean, you might have students that have very good literacy skills, and I know what you indicated that, and I agree, a quality preschool experience would be key in this, but sometimes you don't have that opportunity for some students that are entering into kindergarten, and so you have students that are functioning at a much higher level than other students that are coming in and perhaps have had no preschool experience. And how does the teacher deal with these major gaps, along with all the testing and what have you? What techniques or what different things can they implement to address this? Because that can be significant, and you have a lot of different levels of students
Sure.
at the same
Sure.
time, and
This is one jumping off point in regards to what the process we just described. So the reference that you're making is from some of the rationale in terms of building that base early on, even before some of these assessments come online.
Right.
So an early literacy score of 530, below that indicates that students aren't even ready for kindergarten level skill instruction. So obviously working backwards, that's where the team was inspired to look at some other avenues. Where did we need to build readiness skills in? The quote that also went along with that on page 11 by a Dr. McKenna was that literacy learning doesn't begin abruptly just in kindergarten or at age 5 or 6, K or first grade, but it's an ongoing process that begins even earlier. As children are learning language. So teachers really, do have to work to go back and put in some of these prerequisite skills. And that's what we looked at in this assessment. That in a sense, when you look at the very first skill on that reading taxonomy for the district, which is ERLA that we use, is recognizing patterns in print. So the word print is there, but there's a whole subset of skills that are needed even before you get to print. And that's where we saw a need, really, and started backing into some of the more discrete skills or foundational skills and came up with leveraging the past, as it were. But yeah, there's definitely a disparity, but so going back and trying to build some of that background, which is why when you take a look at some of those yellow levels right now, at first blush, it could be alarming. But recognizing that gap exists and some of this work is taking place in terms of recognizing just, the language, even before you get to letter ID, letter sound, that's what classrooms are working on. But it's no small feat, certainly.
No, certainly when I looked at this and I thought about what you could be presented with in the classroom, it's challenging.
It's a wide gap.
Yeah,
It's
it
a wide
certainly
gap.
is.
Other questions? So some of the adult...
Okay. When you're done, Mr. Ross has a question.
Okay. Moving on to some of the adult action indicators. So what are some of the action steps and things we're doing as a faculty to really approach and achieve the ends we want and those gains that I cited earlier? Looking at making sure that teachers are really writing effective plans that demonstrate an understanding of high-impact teaching strategies that you've heard referenced before. So what does good teaching look like? Not necessarily just the content, but how is that content delivered? Having teachers engage in reflections on their efficacy of the use of certain strategies. So making sure that as a part of my debrief with faculty members, whether it's as a result of an informal or a formal lesson, engaging in some of those conversations to make sure that it's reflective and teachers are really thinking about their practice. Continuing to have teachers post those learning targets, making that learning public. Again, not just for kids and in kid-friendly term, but recognizing that we do have other adult staff members, para-educators, folks that are supporting kids, and it's important that everybody knows what the goal or objective is in terms of what we're working on with kiddos, especially as we have interventionists and other support staff that are working with kids in a WIN block or in some of those intervention settings. Teachers collaborate and will continue to collaborate with all the different coaches, so literacy coach, math coach, in addition to coaches, even looking at the subject area coordinators, so working with Kate O'Donnell in regards to STEM and coordinating in that area. So kindergarten students, you're probably familiar and have heard in last year's plan and a follow-up this year, we've been doing it for several years, engage in an experience at the Choate Kohler Environmental Center known as Kinderwoods. You've heard Kinder Tinkers and some of my other colleagues at the primary level talk about that. Going back and then trying to connect it to standards and leveraging some of the expertise we have right here in district to be able to do that. First and second grades, looking at having faculty work to develop some anchor assessments and working with Unified Classroom and making sure that teachers are aligning those scoring criteria. We want to make sure that folks are going ahead and leveraging those grade level times, PD times, staff meeting times to make sure that they can make those important connections. In regards to social emotional, as I led with, that's such an important aspect of a primary learning institution. Teachers this year, and I want to compliment Mrs. Turner publicly as well, for working with us through the special ed or PPS department, just because understanding what students come to us with, not necessarily in regards to a skill deficit, but as little people, they don't come tabula rasa or blank slates. Kids live full lives before they come to us, and in some respects, there's some difficulties along the way. So partnering to unpack what does it mean when students come to us and have had post-traumatic stressful types of experiences or adverse childhood experiences. Leveraging trauma-informed practices, we want to have teachers build a proficiency with what does that mean and how do we navigate students that may present with challenging behaviors. And not just those outright behaviors, but understanding what kids might be experiencing and how to make sure we can get through to them in that regard. We also have a number of staff members, we're probably 20 plus strong, that have engaged in a formal learning experience through mindfulschools.org. We have a coach that leads us off, Jessica Harris, Teacher of the Year, is very proficient in that regard and has led multiple faculty cohorts for 6 to 8 week sessions, and it's been 2 years now, and we're looking to continue that as a practice. We expanded from just certified staff to even have non-certified staff, paraeducators, participate in that training. It's been really well received. This year we're looking to host our second annual Mindfulness Night for families. We surveyed families after the initial one, and it was clear that they wanted to learn more. I think we learned from hosting it in the winter. We had to reschedule a couple times, so the turnout wasn't as great as we hoped, but 25 strong, and we're looking to hopefully double that number this year and really bring that message to folks. We have an active mindfulness club that takes place in the morning. We have a large cohort of students that do come to school to practice and share some of those strategies with one another, and that's been really successful as well. It's a good lead-in and a connection to the climate piece. Our staff annually works on a working agreement, and we co-sign that agreement in terms of faculty beliefs, similar to the ones that I stated earlier. Staff continue to leverage responsive classroom training, second step techniques, and again, the mindfulness component to make sure that we're trying to create a learning experience for students that sets the stage so that they can engage with that content. Faculty also, I referenced the mindfulness evening. From a professional growth standpoint, I mentioned the cohorts, the different learning venues or opportunities. We do have an active PD committee that likes to structure what those next steps in learning are. So teachers really have a voice and choice in designing what that experience can be. Some things that are definitive focuses right now are structured literacy that I mentioned earlier. So unpacking what that experience is with our literacy how coach, and how that connects to our high impact teaching strategies in the Wallingford Learning and Teaching Framework. Any questions?
Mr. Ross?
First of all, let me compliment you on your students. I had the opportunity to be in your school the other day,
That's right.
and congratulations.
Thank you.
That being said, on page 10, I have a concern with the 37.5% of staff that is seen push, slap, punch, and beat up.
Yeah. Oh, from our climate survey?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that unusual?
Well, one of the things to consider too, that's definitely a point of focus, which is why it's here.
Mm-hmm.
We're having our first climate committee meeting soon, and that's definitely a point that we're following up on. For our students that don't have the language facility, there is a propensity to go to something more physical. It's more difficult to kind of talk out or have an effective dialogue. Now, that's not to say that that's not something we don't continually work on. We absolutely do. One of the leverage points for that is our second step curriculum that we're in our second year working with now. So we have a connection. I know one of my colleagues mentioned posters, common verbiage, language, the lanyards that we use to help kids talk through what some of those problem-solving techniques are. I just met actually with my social worker today in terms of talking about what that recess area looks like, building that common language for students, having some professional development for the lunch recess staff, because most oftentimes it's during those unstructured moments, and we know that and have targeted and pinpointed those times. So those are a couple strategies we're hoping to leverage in the coming year.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Ms. Raggio, anybody else?
Going back to the skilled focus groups across the classroom, I consider that a best practice, but I could see where parents may get nervous about that. Where, you know, my child is with you, whatever, 5 hours a day, but in the area or the time that that child needs like attention for whatever focus area it is, they're sent to a different teacher. Like I could see where there's gonna have to be that educational component to make parents comfortable with that. How are you managing that?
To be honest, I've actually not had that experience so far in regards to feedback. And it's not to say that if there's a newer parent coming in, I think it would be more likely it would be in that circumstance. One of the benefits we have at a primary building are our staff, really from a push-in perspective for the past number of years. When you walk into a classroom and you can see interventionists that have been pushing in, faculty that leads town meetings. It's not just their classroom teacher per se. There is such a presence on the part of faculty that work with one another and collaborate for a number of reasons. In many respects, it becomes transparent, and the kids aren't affected, because most oftentimes a reaction like that is predicated on, I didn't know who it was, or who is this person. I think there's a high visibility and really understanding who these folks are. We run a number of family nights, literacy nights, math nights, mindful nights, there's just a number. In addition to the PTO activities, which I have to say is another pride point, the faculty that turns out for the family events is huge. So people really have a familiarity with folks, so I haven't really seen that. But more often than not, questions that do come up, who is this, or what? It's from our newest families that join us at Moses Y.
I mean, to me, this is meaningful inclusion. This is everybody in one classroom getting the differentiated instruction that Mrs. Slovak was talking about before, and they're just in the classroom that they specifically need to be in for that win block. So that's fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions?
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you.
Rosero. Last but not least, special education.
Good evening, Amy Turner, Director of Special Education, and I have my friends with me here. I've got Lisa Baker, Coordinator of Secondary Education, and Donna Curtis, Coordinator of Elementary Special Education. So, a little bit about the process for developing our school improvement plan. I began in the district in early July. Right away, I had meetings with parents, meetings with staff, and the coordinators and I really sat down. We looked at the programs, we looked at our student data, we really looked at feedback from all the principals. I had an opportunity to meet with each principal this summer, which was a fantastic opportunity to kind of see what were the goals of their buildings, what were the concerns they had at their individual buildings. Even though they all thought that their concerns were different, they actually all were pretty much similar, which is a good thing, which is a really good thing. We also surveyed all of the staff in terms of where did they see the department going, what areas did they think they needed professional development in, what were their concerns, what were their celebrations. So we used all of that information to really look at our plan and to go for the next steps. All right, I'm gonna quickly go through the data. So what you see in front of you now is longitudinal data for second graders, fifth graders, and then the next two slides, eighth graders and seniors. To answer your question, before we even look at this, they are definitely not the same students. So as you go above in the years, more students are identified as having special needs. So it's difficult to look at longitudinal data as a pure data point, because in special education, if you're doing well, you're no longer needed, or it's no longer needed for you. So then, you know, for us, our good data goes through the window, and then we get the students with needs, so then our data looks a little difficult. What you do see with our data, though, is that it's pretty consistent. So students who are receiving services do make growth. They're just not making it at a rate that closes the achievement gap. And that is the goal for us, is to really look at our students, to have really high expectations so we can start closing that achievement gap. Within the school improvement plan that you have in front of you, we analyzed smarter balanced assessments. And what we saw was that the same percentage of students in special education were actually meeting their growth goal as in regular education, which is a great thing. But again, I want that to be higher because I want them to be closing that achievement gap. If we look at math, math is very similar to reading. The only thing that is a little bit of a concern is students are struggling more in math than they are in reading. So we really need to look at what our interventions are in math so we can start closing that gap even quicker. And then, what does this all mean? What are we gonna do? So I'm gonna give that to the coordinators.
Hi, I'm Donna Curtis. I'm the elementary special education coordinator. And the first action step is to implement cohesive PPT procedures throughout the district. We do have 12 different buildings and a number of specialized programs. So not all of our PPTs are run consistently, and that's what we're really trying to work on right now. So we've already implemented, under Amy's guidance, agendas. So everybody has an agenda and follows that consistent agenda throughout the districts. We also make sure everybody's signing in, which wasn't always consistent throughout the district. And just making sure that parents also have a say right away. So our PPTs now begin with the parents' input, and that's throughout the district. So we're really striving to have consistent PPT procedures in all 12 schools and throughout all of our specialized programs.
And we're also working collaboratively with child guidance to provide students experiencing trauma access to mental health support in the school setting. And we're proud to say we do have child guidance in every one of our schools, and the programs are at different stages, but we're excited and hopeful that we can meet the individual needs. I know Rob was referring to it before, even at the K2 level. We are seeing an increasing number of students experiencing trauma, and we need to address that so that they are available for learning.
So we're continuing to work on increasing teacher capacity in the area of reading instruction by providing professional development in structured literacy. We have been working on this for the last few years, especially in collaborating with our regular education teachers, so that we're a team in providing instruction in literacy. Mr. Arcero mentioned Literacy How. I also have gotten incredibly good feedback. I've been able to attend a couple of the sessions myself. I was very impressed with both the content and the person presenting. I've also gotten really good feedback from our special education teachers on the coaching that they've received in the K2. We continue to try to offer professional development in Orton-Gillingham, which all of our specialized reading programs are Orton-Gillingham based. And in March, we're sending 5 newer teachers to a week-long Orton-Gillingham training, which we were fortunate enough to find through CERC training. So it's actually free of charge. We only have to pay for the materials that they receive, which is incredible because these can be up to $1,200 per person. So We're really excited about that. And we're really excited about some of the middle school teachers that we've hired, and some of them have been working with our elementary teachers and sharing their expertise in reading.
And we're also providing parents with education topics related to their interests and needs, and we're excited about that as well. We have monthly parent meetings, and we have different organizations coming from the state, and the first two have been very well attended. We're very excited. The attendance has been awesome. So we're going to keep that up, and we've been pleased to be able to roll out some different topics that haven't been addressed in the past.
And we're also working on professional development in developing standard-based IEPs, trying to maintain the high expectations and providing access to grade level curriculum for all of our students. On November 5th, I presented professional development to all of our K through 12 special education teachers. We had 2 sessions, and we focused on standardized IEPs and making sure that all of our students are receiving instruction at their grade level curriculum. Sometimes it's a struggle because many of our students are below grade level, but we worked hard on kind of unpacking the standards. And even if they weren't exactly at the grade level, they're getting those foundational skills to lead up to those grade level standards.
And we're going to strengthen and reimagine current service models in middle school and high school to optimize opportunities for specialized instruction. And as you all know, the middle school schedule and the high school schedule has unique challenges. And what we're really doing is we've had some really good meetings, and we've been breaking it down and looking at how can we do things differently than they've been done in the past. And how can we meet the individual needs of students and really target instruction to see the improvement that we're looking for. So again, it requires some creativity and thinking outside the box and utilizing our resources in different ways. And so we're excited because we've been doing some good brainstorming.
And that's special education. Questions?
Ms. Levesque?
With regard to behavior management strategies for aggressive behaviors, what are our teachers or para-educators trained in? Is it PMT or?
So we traditionally, the district has been trained in PMT or physical management training. We've actually, one of the things that I've asked, we sent somebody to get trained in what's called crisis prevention, CPI, which is much more of a de-escalation strategy as opposed to a hands-on. So we have, actually our first CPI training is coming up, and we're going to be switching everybody over to that methodology throughout the year.
That's encouraging. The other question, well, I think I have a couple, but what are the demographics when we're looking at some of this data, STAR and ERLA and some of the math progressions? What are the demographics, or do we keep demographics on the educational exceptionalities of students and where they fall in the collection of this data?
So I'm going to, we do not collect data based on student exceptionality, because then you would be making judgment based on a student and their disability. So what we look at as a student as a whole. I can say that the STAR data from last year does not include a lot of our significantly impaired students. However, that has changed this year. It's a directive that we've given that everybody in the district is to be taking the STAR. So we're looking at the growth of all students. So the data that you'll see moving forward will include everybody in the district. Does that make sense?
I understand that. I guess I'm looking at if a student can't take that particular, do we have alternative assessments for those students?
So
I guess that's what I was getting
yeah,
at with the
no,
exceptionalities.
absolutely. So there are very few students, we could probably count them on 2 hands, that need accommodations on these specific assessments. And those accommodations, I can explain them to you. One, the teacher put it up on the board, and the student worked with her to click on them. So we did do some accommodations that were within still looking at that. Assistive communication devices were used to communicate answers, and frequent breaks, so things that they're already doing in their classroom were used, but there wasn't an alternative assessment that was used per se. If the student is at a level that they're not performing academically, they're still in that pre-pre,
Right.
then we would use certain things like, we've used the ABLES, which is a basic learning, literacy and language test that really looks at the real low, can you imitate a behavior, fine motor behavior, can you imitate gross motor? So those are really based on their individual levels, but those are based more on the IEPs as opposed to district data that we would be gathering.
And would they be more apt to be applied to our students that are outplaced, or do
So-
our students that are outplaced participate in some of these assessments as well? I'm just trying to get an idea of.
Absolutely. No, I totally understand. So the data that I've shown you does not reflect, the STAR data is not given to outplaced students. The Smarter Balanced assessment is given to some outplaced students, and then some of them take the CTAA, which is the alternative assessment.
Right.
We do have students in district right now. We have 36 that are taking the alternative assessment. But because the alternative assessment really looks at the students working on curriculum that everybody else is, they are taking the STAR and the ERLA.
And I just want to compliment you once again about making sure that we're communicating with parents and bringing in speakers to address concerns that they brought up and want to be educated on, because I think it's been a fabulous addition, and I've attended the two that have gone on, and we've had a number of parents and different parents between the two settings, and it's been really
Yes, and we're
very
hoping
helpful.
that every month that gets a little bit, expands a little bit more.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Faccio?
For the STAR, do any of the students take it with the extended time preference?
If it is on their IEP that they get an extended time, they would receive extended time.
Okay, so we do utilize that. Okay. And as far as what we've done with Literacy How and the training that's been going on in the classroom, is there a plan, and maybe it's further out, but to have Literacy How come in and help write goals for IEPs that have more of a structured literacy approach?
No. So the goal is that the teachers are using their skills and their analysis of student behavior in regard to reading to write goals and objectives. We've worked a lot on what does a good goal look like, and how do you base that on the assessment data that you have. So we've done a lot internally to really work on what a strong goal and objective should look like. So we wouldn't be expecting, we expect the person that works with them day in and day out that knows them the best to be writing those goals and objectives.
Okay. So do you expect that the goals and objectives would be written around the components of structured literacy, like decoding fluency and coding, as opposed to meeting the next level of STAR?
So a goal should always look at where they're making growth. The objectives would look at the individual skills that they need to acquire to get to that goal. So we would expect those goals to be, so-and-so will read at a second grade level, and then all of those objectives will be those individual skills that that child needs to garner, which would be based on that structured literacy model, but we would never put a model within a goal or objective because that's inappropriate.
Perfect. Thank you.
Ms. Levesque?
I knew I had another
Sure.
question. Could you tell me a little bit more about the Special Education Youth Leadership Council? That's of interest to me.
Okay, great news. We just found out today that we got accepted.
Great.
So we are a district that has been provided the opportunity to create a youth advisory council. It's a statewide initiative. We will have six high schoolers from Sheehan and 6 high schoolers from Lyman Hall. The state is going to come in and they're going to work with the individual students, and the beginning process is, what is special education? How do you feel in the building, in your school? How do you feel in your classes about being a student that has special needs? They are going to work with them on how to advocate for themselves and how to advocate for the school as a whole. So really how to speak to administration and teachers on, what are the things that they see that they need in regard to special education within the district. And then later on in the spring, that cohort of students will be going to a state conference, and they will be working with students with special needs in high schools around the state. And they will have conversations about what does Wallingford provide special education students versus other districts. They will also look at now that how do they advocate for themselves as they become older and grow up. So we're really excited about this opportunity to provide to the students. The students will be chosen by application, and administrators will kind of look. We want a nice wide variety of students going. So we'll be starting that process within the next week or two. I have a phone call on Friday to plan.
Fabulous opportunity for
Yes.
those students.
It is. It's very exciting.
I do have one more question. What type of supports I know that child guidance is in working with the students individually who are experiencing trauma, but what types of supports do we have in place for classroom teachers to kind of support them? What's available to them when they have classrooms of kids that maybe one or two kids are experiencing trauma and cause large disruptions in their classrooms?
Okay. So we have provided, let me backtrack. Child guidance will be working with the staff in all of the buildings that they're working in, which happens to be every building, just on that piece. How do you take care of yourself? How do you identify your own stressors? How do you identify your own adverse impacts, and how that reflects on students, and how the student's behavior actually triggers that within you? So what are some strategies that you can use to take care of yourself, to reduce your stress, take a break, identify what is an actual trigger and what's kind of you're projecting yourself on the situation. So child guidance did a full workshop with all the elementary staff last Tuesday, election day. And then they'll be doing individual staff as they're working in the different schools. Child guidance will also be providing parent sessions for the parents of the students that they're working with in all of the schools as well. And then we are working with mental health providers in terms of how to support their teachers and their staffs within the buildings when situations arise. The principals had 2 sessions about a month ago. We did 2 half-days on how to support their staff, how to develop intervention plans. We sat down with all of the administrators, school psychologists, and social workers in the district. It was a fantastic day where the pre-K through 2 staff could, from all 4 schools could sit together, and 3 through 5, middle and high. And there was a lot of conversation about, oh, that's happening in your school, what do you do? So they really gave the mental health providers an opportunity to really strategize how they can support their staff.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Good stuff.
Public comments. Oh, thank you, Ms. Turner. Thank you very much.
That was awesome.
Is there any public comment? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.